They're not descended from modern monkeys, they're not descended from modern apes. They are modern animals just as we are. They are our cousins, they're not our ancestors.
Oh my gosh, Maddie. What? She's peeing in her own mouth. Did you see that? Yeah.
There are plenty of ways in which God could be involved in creation of the universe, even creation of life. Maybe he did it via evolution, though. Could be the working out of God's purpose.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
I, at that time, had never heard of Ben Stein, and I had been duped by a man called Mathis into taking part in a film which I thought was a serious exploration of science and religion. That's what I was told. I only much later discovered that it was a creationist front and that I had been fooled into doing something that I would never normally have done. When I spoke to Ben Stein, I took him seriously. I thought he was, well, until the end of that interview, as you saw. And when he asked me that question, something like, could you ever imagine any kind of intelligent design? I bent over backwards to try to give intelligent design its best shot. Its best shot for me was something like designed by an alien intelligence, something like what Francis Crick and Leslie Orgel had proposed as directed panspermia. I don't believe in that, I didn't believe in that, I never said I did believe in that, but I was trying to bend over backwards to give intelligent design its best shot.
I was watching an interesting video, and again, if any of this you don't want to talk about, push us along.
I have accepted that if we were to base our societies on Darwinian principles, they would be brutal, harsh, and unpleasant. I have told you that I want not to live in a Darwinian society.
There was a video with this woman, Wendy Wright, I found it very interesting to watch because I saw you making all the good arguments.
Since Darwin's time, plenty of things that Darwin thought have now been shown to be wrong. I mean, Darwin was completely wrong about genetics, for example. And so there are modern controversies in Darwinism.
But a good argument will never make headway if the participants don't agree to certain basic rules of engagement.
Yeah.
You could have your beliefs, we can have our beliefs, and both can be based on different, on evidence, even the same evidence. But I think fundamentally, where our differences come down to is whether there was a creator or whether there was not a creator.
And I just, at some point, I was wondering if it was fighting a just losing battle. And so, did you find that satisfying, that conversation with her?
Of course not, no. But in a way, I mean, she was purporting to be playing by the same rules, because what she kept saying was, show me the evidence, show me the evidence.
Science is taking a theory and challenging it to see if it can stand up.
That's right.
And so while people may not like when the evidence doesn't stand up to further testing, but that's what science is about.
Yes, well, that is what science is about. Show me the evidence, show me the evidence.
If we have gone from slime to human beings, there should be an overwhelming amount of evidence, not these isolated cases that could be interpreted differently.
But you must have known that going in.
Well,
right?
But I mean, I kept saying, okay, let's go to the museum. I will show you the evidence.
Yes.
One problem that evolutionists have is that in the past, when there's been great acclaim of a discovery to show from one species to another, it's been proven to be fraudulent.
Show me the evidence.
So evolutionists have a problem in their own history. The fact that there have been so many cases of fraud or misinterpretation of information that now we have a problem believing what you say.
There was the Piltdown Man in the 1920s. Show me the evidence.
But you're assuming that if you laid out a logical argument, she would be convinced.
No, well, okay.
But that is clearly...
No, clearly not. Well, in her case, I would not have aspired to change her mind. But this was a television program we were making. I was interviewing her for television. And so I didn't really have my eye on changing her mind. I had my eye on the 2 million people who were going to be watching the television. Do you think that children should be taught critical thinking at school?
In fact, that is what we argue for, is that children to be taught evidence so that they can decide for themselves, so they can figure out for themselves what is truth. And the position we've taken is teach the controversy, teach all the information, not just selected information that promotes one viewpoint, which most of the times that's evolution. But let's teach all the information so that the school children can learn how to think for themselves and come to their own conclusions.
Nobody could possibly object to teaching children to think for themselves.
I wish that were the case, that people would not object to teaching all the information or teaching children in a manner so they can think for themselves. But sadly, there's been a very heavy-handed effort in the United States to clamp down, not allow any teaching that is contrary to evolution, even to the point of court orders.
When you say teach the controversy, it would be nice. I mean, of course, scientists teach controversies all the time. There's a lot of controversy in science. There's evidence on one side, there's evidence on the other side. There are controversies between people who think that natural selection is all important in driving evolution. And there are people who think that natural selection is only part of it and that there are other things that drive evolution. There are controversies about whether evolution goes smoothly and continuously, or whether it goes in jumps, whether there are sort of long periods where not much evolution happens, and then a rather sudden burst of evolution.
The word evolution has at least 6 different meanings. First, we'd have to have cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter, the Big Bang, okay? Secondly, we'd have to have chemical evolution. That's where all of the elements evolve from hydrogen. I think that's silly. We'll talk about that in a minute. Thirdly, there'd have to be stellar evolution. The stars would have to evolve. Cosmic evolution, chemical evolution, and stellar evolution. There's a lot of stars out there. The last estimate, in 2003, the most recent estimate is there are enough stars out there right now that we know about that everybody on planet Earth can own 11 trillion of them to yourself. Those are the ones we know about. We don't know about the ones that we don't know about. Fourthly, there's going to have to be organic evolution. Somewhere, somehow, life has to get started from non-living material. Okay? Fifthly, there'd have to be macroevolution, where an animal changes into a different kind of animal. And lastly, microevolution. I object to the term, but they use it, so I believe in number 6. That happens. I think variations happen within the kinds, but the first 5 are purely religious. I think, quite frankly, they're stupid.
Can you give an example of a genetic mutation or an evolutionary process which can be seen to increase the information in the genome?
Can you just stop when I think...
I'm recording.
Okay. There's a popular misunderstanding of evolution which says that fish turned into reptiles and reptiles turned into mammals, and so somehow we ought to be able to look around the world today and look at our ancestors. We ought to be able to see the intermediates between fish and reptiles, or between reptiles and mammals. We ought to be able to see fish kind of on the way to becoming reptiles. But of course that's not the way it is at all. Fish are modern animals. They're just as modern as we are. They're descended from ancestors, which we're descended from. Way back 300 million years ago, there would have been an ancestor, which was the ancestor of modern fish and the ancestor of modern humans. And that ancestor, if you could have been there then, you could have seen the first steps towards a fish, say, coming out onto the land and becoming something like an amphibian. But that was a long time ago. You wouldn't expect to see that today. And so quite a lot of the misunderstanding of evolution, I suppose, stems from the fact that people are looking at modern animals and thinking that Darwin has said we're descended from them. Well, we're not. We're not descended from modern fish. We're not descended from modern monkeys. We're not descended from modern apes. They are modern animals just as we are. They are our cousins. They're not our ancestors.
Oh my gosh, Maddie. What? She's peeing in her own mouth. Did you see that? Yeah.
There's a popular misunderstanding of evolution which says that fish turned into reptiles and reptiles turned into mammals, and so somehow we ought to be able to look around the world today and look at our ancestors. We ought to be able to see the intermediates between fish and reptiles, and between reptiles and mammals. We ought to be able to see fish kind of on the way to becoming reptiles. But of course that's not the way it is at all. Fish are modern animals. They're just as modern as we are. They're descended from ancestors, which we're descended from. Way back 300 million years ago, there would have been an ancestor, which was the ancestor of modern fish and the ancestor of modern humans. And that ancestor, if you could have been there then, you could have seen the first steps towards a fish, say, coming out onto the land and becoming something like an amphibian. But that was a long time ago. You wouldn't expect to see that today. And so quite a lot of the misunderstanding of evolution, I suppose, stems from the fact that people are looking at modern animals and thinking that Darwin has said we're descended from them. Well, we're not. We're not descended from modern fish. We're not descended from modern monkeys. We're not descended from modern apes. They are modern animals just as we are. They're our cousins. They're not our ancestors.
So at Bill's request, we're covering today more reasons why evolution is stupid. Now, let me define some terms and some positions. I believe the Bible teaches very clearly, and I believe the scientific evidence points very clearly to this earth being instantly created in 6 days about 6,000 years ago, and a great big flood about 4,400 years ago that completely destroyed the world and dropped everybody's property value to zero. And then Jesus came 2,000 years ago, and so that's the top timeline, and that's the position I take, and I believe that's true and defensible scientifically. The evolution theory says 20 billion years ago there was a big bang where nothing exploded and made everything. And then 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down and developed a hard rocky crust, and it rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup, and the soup came alive about 3 billion years ago. And that first life form found somebody to marry. That's a good trick, of course, and something to eat, and slowly evolved into everything we see today. I think the evolution theory is not defensible scientifically. Let's define some more terms here. Stupid. Lacking normal intelligence. Foolish. Silly. A stupid idea. Now, I was taught by my mommy, don't use the word stupid, okay? So when Bill said, preach on why evolution is stupid, I said, that's going to be easy to do, but it's going to be hard because it's been entrained in me since I was a little bitty. You know, you don't use that word. So I don't want to belittle anybody who believes in evolution here today, and I'm sure there are quite a few, that's fine. It's just not a common sense idea. It doesn't make sense. The things about evolution just simply are lacking normal intelligence. And we want to fix that today. Now, I collect science books. I taught science 15 years. I happen to love the subject. Richard Dawkins said, it's absolutely safe to say, if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked.
Has this approach really been effective?
I don't know. I suspect so. I think that my guess is that there are a very large number of people who are sitting on the fence, or perhaps hardly even realize there was a fence to sit on, and who will see something like my interview with Wendy Wright and will be swayed to think this is actually quite an interesting subject. I liked one phrase you used there. You talked about the sort of society in which we wish to live. And I'll tell you quite freely that a society based upon Darwinian principles is exactly the sort of society I do not wish to live in. It would be a terrible society. It would be a sort of George Bush kind of society, if I can put it like that, or Margaret Thatcher kind of society. I do not wish to live in a Darwinian world. It's a very unpleasant world. It's a thoroughly unpleasant world, not the kind of world we wish to live in. So let us construct the kind of society in which we wish to live, which will be a non-Darwinian society. It will be the sort of society which departs from Darwinian principles. A society that was based on Darwinian principles would be a ruthless, free market economy in which the rich trample the poor, in which it would be the sort of opposite of a liberal socialist society, in fact. I'm against Darwin where politics is concerned.
Folks, there is a battle going on, okay? Whether you realize it or not, whether you understand it or not, there's a war going on in our culture. And there are two basic sides. One side says, God made this world, He owns it, He makes the rules. The other side said, nobody makes this world, there are no rules. And it's a real war going on, and I'm right smack in the middle of it.
Look, these people who call themselves Christians actually don't read the Bible, don't go to church, don't believe Jesus was the Son of God, don't even know what the first book of the New Testament is.
But Richard,
it's up to you to make up your mind whether you think they're Christian. Don't ask me. My opinion is not relevant.
Richard, if I said to you, what is the full title of The Origin of Species? I'm sure you can tell me that.
Yes, I could.
Go on then.
On The Origin of Species, on The Origin of Species, there is a subtitle with respect to the preservation of favoured races in the fight, in the struggle for life.
You're the high pope of Darwinism.
Not bad, actually. I'd give him some just...
But if you asked people who believed in evolution what that question, and you came back and said 2% got it right, it would terribly easy for me to go, they don't really believe it after all. It's just not fair to ask people these questions. They self-identify as Christians, and I think you should respect that.
How do you feel about a human being holding irrational or contradictory beliefs at the same time? So let me give you a concrete example.
Okay.
So my father died 27 years ago. I know he's dead. I still talk to him on a regular basis.
Yeah.
There are cases when I'll ask him to do things. As a physicist, I know that makes no sense. As a human being, I don't give a So I guess when you hear that, do you say, man, you're an idiot?
No,
or like,
no,
you know...
No. No, I think that's quite normal, and I
do you
think
do
that's
it?
a human.
I mean, do you find yourself doing it?
No, but I wouldn't be terribly. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, it wouldn't shock me.
If a plane was going down, you're on it. Do you pray to God?
No, I wouldn't.
Would you even invoke God even for a moment?
I might use the word God.
What would you mean by which God? Which God would you mean?
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, it's part of the language.
Yes.
It's not. Yeah. There are times when one says, "Oh my God."
What is the full title of The Origin of Species?
Oh God. Oh God.
My approach has always been sort of, and it's yours too, really, to show people the wonder of science and get them excited about the power of scientific explanation rather than trying to say this other stuff makes no sense. Don't touch it, but just show them the wonder.
That science is unlocking the mysteries of the laws put in place by God, that God created this earth with certain laws like the law of gravity to allow it to function.
It goes back to Santa Claus, really. You know, do you want somebody to discover the power of the scientific approach, or do you want to tell them that this other approach doesn't work?
Science is actually discovering and unlocking the secrets of the laws that God put in place.
There's a lot in that, and I think we probably need to do it both ways.
Right.
Yeah.
You actually helped to make my case quite well, and that is that a philosophy that is drawn out of Darwinism would be extremely brutal, and in fact has been. That has been the experience.
I've just said that. I've agreed with that.
And that's why the societies that have been built on a viewpoint that God created each one of us, however He did it, that's part of the science of unlocking, of discovering how that was done.
Textbook says you're an animal. Kids, don't you buy that for a second. That's stupid. You're not an animal. You're not just an animal. You're made in God's image. You're going to answer to God one of these days for everything you've ever said or thought or done. Arthur Keith said, evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. We don't want to believe this theory. Well, that's a stupid reason to go to hell, because you don't like the theory of that God might have made the world. Julian Huxley said, I suppose the reason we leapt at the origin of species was the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. That's stupid. The Bible says they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do things which are not convenient. That's dangerous. Can you imagine if God gave up on you? And you believe you came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago because that's what you've been taught in school. God is not willing that any should perish. But to accept the idea that you came from a rock and to reject the idea that God created this world, it is stupid, okay? I'm sorry, there's no kind way to say it. The Bible says God cannot lie. He promised, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Now that's smart. That's the deal of the century, the deal of a lifetime. God says, here, I'll take all your sins, throw them as far as east is from the west, and I'll give you my righteousness on your account. On account of you don't have any. That's what I did 36 years ago. I said, Lord, I'm a sinner. He said, you can say that again. I said, Lord, I deserve to go to hell. He said, you can say that again too. I said, but Lord, I want you to save me. I want you to forgive me based on what Jesus did. Wow, He did. He'll do the same for you. Let's summarize here. God made this world. He owns it. He makes the rules, and we're guilty of breaking His rules. He told us pretty clearly, don't lie. We've all lied. Don't steal. We've stolen. You can read the whole list and find out we're guilty. We're going to have to be punished or find a substitute. And that's where Jesus comes in. 36 years ago, I asked the Lord to come in my heart and save me. What if He died today? Where would you go? If you're not sure you're saved, you ought to think about it. You're going to be dead for a long time. I mean, a really, really long time. And if you're not sure you're going to heaven, I think it's stupid to get out on that highway. Have you seen the way they drive here in Colorado? Man, you have got some rednecks moved out west here, folks. I'm telling you what. I'm going to die someday. I'm going to try to make it the last thing I do, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen to you too. All you get's that little bitty dash between two dates. My recommendation would be you take your little dash and say, Lord, you can have it. You can do something with it. What are you doing with your little dash? Hey, the people that have 80 pairs of shoes in their closet, do you know what they want? More shoes. People that have a big house, guess what they want? A bigger house. People that shoot the 10-point buck, guess what they want? They want to shoot a 12-point. People that have $1 million in the bank, guess what they want? More. It takes us a whole lifetime to figure out things here aren't going to satisfy. They just aren't. You can work hard, make a bunch of money, and die rich. Okay. You're going to die either way. Or you can give your little dash to Jesus. Say, Lord, would you do something with this?
Because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness.
Show me the evidence. Show me the evidence.
It goes back to Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Really.
Keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called, which some professing have heard concerning the faith.